I wasn't the type of girl who dreamed about her wedding since childhood. I didn't collect Pinterest boards or imagine my perfect dress. But when I met Daniel, something shifted. He was kind, attentive, and surprisingly old-fashioned in a way that felt grounding. He opened doors, remembered little details, and didn't mind my chaotic sense of humor or my stubborn independence. He felt safe, like a soft place to land. I fell fast, and I fell hard. We met at a bookstore. I was clutching a battered copy of Wuthering Heights, and he made a joke about doomed love stories. We talked for 3 hours on that first day, sitting on a bench outside while the sky turned pink and chilly. A week later, we were inseparable. Everything moved quickly, maybe too quickly in hindsight. 6 months in, we were engaged. He proposed during a family dinner at his parents' house. His mom, Judith, practically shrieked before I could say yes. She pulled me into a stiff hug and called me her future daughter, like it was already a done deal. I chalked it up to nerves. But even then, something about her energy made my spine tighten. She was always present, in every decision, every conversation. From what we should serve at the reception to which venue was good enough for the Clark family, Judith had an opinion. And not just an opinion, rules. I brushed it off, thinking she'd ease up eventually, that she just needed time to trust me. She didn't. 3 weeks before the wedding, Judith called me to her house for something special. I expected a bracelet or maybe a letter from Daniel's grandmother. Instead, she led me to her bedroom closet like we were about to unearth some family treasure. It was a dress, wrapped in plastic, yellowing around the lace. Heavy satin, high neck, long sleeves, and a train that looked like it had soaked up every wordless argument from the 80s. She laid it out with trembling hands, like she was offering me her soul. "This is the dress I wore when I married Daniel's father," she said, her voice thick with sentiment. "It would mean the world if you wore it on the day you become part of our family." Something inside me recoiled, not just because the dress looked like a museum exhibit, but because of the way she said it, like this was a rite, a test, like my acceptance hinged on this one choice. I forced a smile and said I'd think about it, but even as I spoke, I could feel the walls closing in. This wasn't a request. Not really. It was a demand wrapped in nostalgia. And suddenly, that fairy tale feeling I'd been clinging to started to unravel, thread by thread. I took the dress home that night out of pure politeness. It sat in the corner of my living room like a bad omen, still in its plastic covering, like even the fabric knew it didn't belong on me. The smell hit me before I even opened the garment bag. Old dust, yes, but also something worse, like stale perfume and suppressed bitterness. I tried to picture myself walking down the aisle in it, the high neck choking me, the sleeves swallowing my arms, the lace itching my skin. It didn't feel like a dress. It felt like a warning. A few days later, Judith invited me over again, this time for tea, which sounded innocent enough. When I arrived, she was already seated, perfectly made up, a china cup perched in her hand like she was waiting for a chess opponent to make their next move. She didn't waste time. "That dress is a legacy, you know," she said calmly, stirring her tea with a kind of delicate care that made my stomach churn. 3 generations of Clark women have worn it. Daniel's grandmother, then me, now you. There it was, the trap, laid out in porcelain and powdered sugar. I nodded, unsure of how to respond. The words felt loaded, sacred, and sharp. I could feel the weight of expectation pressing against my chest like a hand. "It's not just a dress," she continued, voice trembling just enough to sound human. "It's a symbol of family, of loyalty, of understanding where you belong, where I belong." As if I hadn't already felt the subtle corrections when I spoke too casually, the way she looked past me during family dinners, how she always called me Daniel's girl instead of my name. I opened my mouth, ready to say something honest, something simple, like, "It's not my style," or "I already bought my dress," but the moment I did, her face changed. Her hand went to her chest. Her eyes shimmered like she'd just been told her own wedding was cancelled. "I thought you understood how much this meant to me," she whispered. "To all of us. But maybe I was wrong." I sat there frozen. It was a performance, of course, a well-practiced one. But the worst part, Daniel was in the room. He sat beside her the whole time, sipping tea, his eyes bouncing between us like he didn't quite want to be there. He didn't say a word. That was the moment something cracked. Not between me and Judith, that had been fractured from the start, but between me and him. The silence said everything. Not even a hand on my back. Not a glance that said, "You don't have to do this." It took me 3 nights of restless sleep, 2 glasses of wine, and 1 long stare into the mirror before I finally said it. "No. No, I won't wear the dress. No, I won't pretend it's just a small thing. No, I won't trade my voice for a seat at a table that's already set against me." I rehearsed it carefully, almost clinically. Not too emotional, not too firm. Just honest, respectful, adult. I waited until Daniel came home from work. I told him gently but clearly. I appreciated the gesture, I understood the history, but I had already chosen a dress that made me feel like myself. He stared at me for a long second, like he was trying to figure out if I was joking or just hormonal. Then he sighed. A long, deflating, disappointed sigh. "You know how much this means to her," he said. "Just, can't you not make this a thing?" It wasn't anger in his voice. It was exhaustion, like I was the complication, like his mother had offered the world and I had spit in her face. "She cried when I told her you were thinking of saying no," he added. "I mean, come on. She's trying." Was she trying? Because from where I stood, it felt like Judith was playing a game I didn't agree to join, one where every rule was unwritten and every move was a test. "I just don't want this to blow up into something bigger than it needs to be," he said, rubbing the bridge of his nose. I stood there still, not angry, not crying, just still, and that stillness scared me more than anything, because when the man you love minimizes you, when your choices become inconveniences to be managed, when you're expected to sacrifice comfort to keep someone else comfortable, it chips away at you. Quietly. The next morning, Judith called. She didn't even say hello, just launched right in with, "I just don't understand why you're being so cold, why you can't see this is about love, not control." Then came the tears, the soft, shaky voice, the narrative twist where I became the cold outsider ruining the sacred tradition. She said Daniel had been so upset, and how she never expected this kind of betrayal before the wedding. Betrayal. That was the word that stuck. I hung up politely. I didn't yell. I didn't defend myself. But when I sat down on the couch, I realized my hands were shaking. The night before everything fell apart, the house was too quiet. That kind of silence that feels sharp, not peaceful, like it's waiting to break. I could sense it even before Daniel walked in and said, "Mom wants us to have a talk." A talk. That was the word he used. Like it was casual. Like we were going to sit down over wine and laugh about centerpieces. But when I stepped into the living room and saw Judith perched like a queen in her usual corner of the couch, and his sister beside her with her arms crossed, I knew exactly what this was. It was a tribunal, and I was the problem they were here to solve. Judith's voice was soft, sugary, too calm to be kind. She started with, "We just want to make sure everyone's still on the same page." But she didn't mean we. She meant me. I was the one who needed realignment. I was the page out of sync. She asked about the dress again, like she hadn't already cried and called and guilt, like I hadn't already said no 100 different ways. She phrased it like a compromise, but it wasn't. It was an ultimatum with lace trim. I said nothing. My silence stretched, long and stiff, across the room. I looked at Daniel. His eyes dropped. He couldn't meet mine. That's when Judith leaned back, sighed dramatically, and said, "I just don't understand how someone can be so ungrateful." Ungrateful. That was the word she clung to now. Not independent. Not authentic. Ungrateful. Because I wouldn't surrender myself to her vision. I stood to leave the room. I needed air, space, anything. That's when I heard it. His sister, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. She's always been so pretentious. Like nothing's ever good enough for her. And then Judith again, softer, but clear as glass. She's not a Clark. She doesn't get it. It didn't matter that I was 2 feet away. It was like I'd already been erased. I walked to the guest room, grabbed my things in silence. I didn't cry. Not yet. I felt something deeper. A still, slow heartbreak. The kind that doesn't scream. It just sets in like frost. Daniel followed me. Shut the door behind him. He didn't yell. He didn't even look angry. Just tired. "I think you should go," he said. "Just for a few days. Until things calm down. Before this turns into something we can't fix." That was his idea of protection. Not standing beside me, but asking me to vanish so they wouldn't be uncomfortable. I nodded. And I left. My suitcase wheeled awkwardly behind me as I stepped into the rideshare. No ring. No groom. No apology. Just me. In the dress I chose. It was still in the garment bag, hanging beside me like a quiet promise. Not a fairy tale gown, not some heirloom heavy with someone else's expectations. Just simple, soft ivory satin with a neckline that felt like me. It didn't scream tradition. It didn't ask permission. It just existed, for my body, my moment, my life. I had no venue. No cake, no first dance, but I had my self-respect, and right then, that was the only foundation solid enough to stand on. I spent the night at my friend Myra's place. She didn't ask questions, just opened the door, handed me a glass of wine, and sat beside me in silence. That silence was a gift, not like the one in Judith's house. This one held space. The texts started rolling in the next morning. First a few friends from the guest list. "What happened? Are you okay? Is the wedding still on?" Then came the more pointed ones. From his cousin. I knew something was off when you didn't wear her dress. From his aunt. Honestly, I'm kind of glad. She always had it out for you. From an old college friend. You deserve someone who doesn't flinch when it's time to choose you. The one that hit hardest was from Daniel's best man. I'm sorry. You never stood a chance in that family. And he was right. Looking back, I saw it clearly now. The polite digs. The backhanded compliments. The way Judith always referred to me as her. Never by name. Every memory had a crack in it I hadn't noticed at the time. That time she accidentally booked a spa day for herself the morning of our cake tasting. That moment she called my apartment cute for now. That weekend she insisted Daniel spend with her instead of helping me move. Each moment, so small alone, now stacked into a wall I'd been trying to climb while smiling. Even my engagement photos felt hollow now. I remembered smiling into the camera, Daniel's hand resting on my waist, but I could still hear his mom whispering behind us, telling me to angle my hips better because I looked a bit wide from the side. It was a Wednesday when I saw the photos. I wasn't looking for them. They found me anyway. Algorithm cruelty wrapped in white and gold. A mutual friend had posted a carousel. Laughter. Candles. Table numbers I had helped design months ago. My chest tightened before I even swiped. But I did. And there he was. Daniel. Standing at the altar. Smiling. Not nervously, not regretfully. Smiling like nothing had fractured. Like he hadn't sent me away days before we were supposed to say, I do. Next photo. The bride. She wore the dress. Judith's dress. The heavy silk, the lace shoulders, the same vintage buttons Judith had described in loving detail. It clung awkwardly on the new girl, someone I didn't recognize, someone who looked too calm, too pliable. Her face was soft, pleasant, not excited, not radiant, just appropriate. That word Judith had always loved. It took a second for my mind to connect the pieces. Then it hit me. This wasn't just a photo shoot. This was the wedding. They'd replaced me. No announcements. No postponement. No cancelled deposits. Just a new body in the same script. I sat there staring at the screen, my phone slowly tilting in my hand. I waited for the anger, for the pain, for the screaming fury I thought would come when I saw him with someone else. But instead, something else unfurled inside me. Relief. It was like finally taking off a coat that had been weighing me down for months without me even realizing it. I wasn't the bride because I was never meant to be in that picture. I didn't belong in that room where silence was louder than support, where expectations wore dresses heavier than love. I scrolled further. Judith looked radiant, of course, posed next to the new bride like she'd been sculpted from pride and victory. Her smile made my stomach turn, not because she won, but because I'd once thought I wanted her approval. How many pieces of myself had I trimmed to fit into that family's mold? And now, that mold had found someone else to fill it. Someone more obedient. Someone quieter. Someone willing to wear the dress. They hadn't just replaced me. They had been ready to. Like the seat was never mine to keep. But I didn't cry. I closed the app. Put the phone down. Sometimes I still wake up with the weight of that dress pressing on my chest. Not the fabric itself. God, no. But the meaning of it. What it stood for. What it demanded I become. That version of me, the one who almost said yes, who almost let herself be zipped into a legacy she didn't believe in, she still lingers in my memory like a warning. A shadow I passed through but didn't let consume me. I think about the alternate timeline sometimes. The one where I stayed. Where I wore the dress, smiled for the photos, whispered vows I didn't write with a man who didn't defend me. A timeline where I became someone manageable, silenced, acceptable. I would have made it through the ceremony. I know I would have. I would have made small talk with guests who whispered behind napkins. I would have nodded along while Judith pretended to pass the torch, knowing she still held the match. But then what? Would I have ever truly been me again? No. And that's why I left. Because sometimes survival doesn't look like running into flames. It looks like walking away from the altar when every camera is waiting. It looks like saying no, even when the world hisses ungrateful. I didn't have a perfect ending. Still don't. No knight in shining armor arrived to tell me I was brave. No Hollywood twist. No revenge plot. Just me, standing in the quiet, whole, and honestly, that's enough. There were people who called me dramatic, others who said I should have compromised. Some even whispered that I blew it, that I let a dress ruin my future. But none of those people saw what was behind the lace and buttons. They didn't see the gaslighting smiles, the performative traditions, the way silence was a currency in that house, and I was always in debt. I didn't lose a wedding. I lost a lie. And in return, I found something much harder to come by, the permission to take up space in my own story, without apology, without translation, without shrink-wrapping myself to fit someone else's version of love. I don't have a 5-year plan. I don't know where this road leads. But I know this. I left the house that tried to shrink me. I left the man who let me walk away. I left the dress that carried someone else's dreams stitched into every seam. And I took myself with me. Maybe that's not the ending people want. But for me, it's the beginning. Because real stories don't end with, I do. They begin the moment you say, I won't.